This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the X-Cast. As ever, the truth is in here. I'm your host on this episode, Carl Sweeney, and welcome back to I Want to Believe Minute, which is the series that the X-Cast is doing at the moment, as I'm sure you know, where we unpick the second X-Files movie 1 minute at a time. I think we just keep saying it in case somebody does randomly stumble upon the podcast, 64 episodes into this particular series. And 64, because today is minute 64. It begins at 63 minutes 0 seconds as Drummy, our friend Exhibit, he interrupts Mulder and Scully's conversation, and it goes through to 63 minutes 59 seconds as FBI agents are driving to the suspect's offices. And Clara Cook is back with me. Hello, Clara.
Hello, Carl.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm ready for my next minute.
Yeah, let's get on with this minute then. So, actually, before we do, quick reminder that we're all over social media. If you're enjoying the show, you can help us, broaden our appeal and reach X-Files fans who don't know about the X-Cast. And one of the ways you can do that is by dropping us a quick 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Okay, Clara. So, like I said on the last minute, this scene kind of, was in progress as we rounded off last time. Like I said, what happens is that Exhibit's character, Agent Drummy, interrupts Mulder and Scully. He's got news about the villains of the piece here. He's talking about the employer of the suspect, who is one of the abductors, and I think the character is called Franz Tomchechin, and he's played by an actor called Fagin Woodcock. And Drummy gets into some of the backstory, doesn't he? That this person is an old friend of Father Joe's. And what he's meaning by that is that this is one of the 37 altar boys who, it sounds like have been raped by Father Joe. And this character is married to Callum Keith Rennie's character in the state of Massachusetts. So we can talk about what that is referring to, where that comes in sort of the history of same-sex marriage being legalized and so on. But this is kind of teeing up what's coming in the following minutes. We're going to talk about Clara, isn't it? Because I think he's talking about how they've got a warrant to search their offices. So we're kind of building up to the search of the offices, which is going to involve the chase and so on. So quite an exposition-heavy minute, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And this is supposed to be, I think, the reveal of why this guy might be doing what he's doing. I do feel like it's done kind of casually, to be honest.
Quite low-key.
Yeah. And never mentioned really again. I mean, I think it's mentioned that the one of the guys is a previous altar boy again, isn't it? But it's the whole idea of the fact that these two men are married, or the fact that this might be done. All of this might be done because the guy is desperate to keep his partner alive. We never hear that again.
I suppose it's kind of implicitly alluded to in a previous scene when the authorities turn up to question Callum Keith Rennie's character, and he says something about, well, he's got cancer. And I think you're supposed to read into that kind of his strength of feeling about this other person. You
do see him talk to his partner towards the end of the film, don't you? And he's sort of being quite gentle and tender, isn't he? Well, I thought he was. He was kind of sort of talking to him gently and trying to reassure him in a way that we haven't seen this character, we've seen this character murder people. So, he's not been shown like that before.
Do you think this is all about the lengths people would go to for somebody they love or somebody they care for, or somebody they have the power to help? Because we have the parallel storyline, don't we, involving Scully and the young boy who conventional treatments don't seem to have worked with that disease he has, and there's an experimental treatment, and there's all the interplay between Scully and the father at the hospital and the parents about, is this the right course of action? And I suppose you have this parallel storyline here where it's about this man trying to do whatever it takes to save the man he's married to, the man he loves. Do you think there's an intentional kind of parallel juxtaposition there?
I think there is. I think it could have been more. Could have been made of it. I think it could have been expressed more sort of overtly. I think it's like it's just not written to be explicit enough for me. I think it should be more explicit. I also think that if this guy is doing this for love, I think that should be made more explicit too. I think, I mean, obviously what he's doing is very illegal and wrong, but yeah, I mean, if you tell the story from his point of view, this would be like some sort of epic love story. Do you know what I mean? Like if you switch the stories around a little bit for the point of view, it'd be quite different. I also think it's interesting because I think if we think about the whole history of Mulder and Scully's done some really, well, also same Mulder too, have done some really, really sort of dramatic things in order to keep each other safe, and yelled at people in hospitals and, you know, broken into facilities, and just whenever there's something happening to one of them, the other one does kind of basically go to extreme lengths to cure or help or save the other person. So how's that different from this guy and his husband? I guess Mulder and Scully haven't killed people. Well, I don't have to kill people. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not harvesting other people's organs, but or body parts. But this guy could be a more sympathetic character, and the film could have made him a more sympathetic character. But I think whether it's deliberate to not like sort of delve into that, or whether they just didn't have the time and they didn't have the sort of space in the script. I don't know.
Or did the studio want this aspect of the movie to be minimised? You know, what external factors are there that maybe are shaping how the screenplay is put together? But I suppose what maybe you're kind of saying, or maybe I'm wondering if this is what you're thinking about anyway, is that there is kind of a tradition, isn't there, of, you know, there's a long history of the portrayal of gay characters. Sometimes people think it's a very recent thing that we're seeing gay characters included in films and TV, but actually the history of homosexual representation goes all the way back to the silent era. But what's changed is the way gay characters are represented over time. But for a long period, there was a time, I think, in American cinema, and especially American cinema, where gay characters were dangerous or pathological, predatory. They could be villains or marked out as comic in some way. Always kind of on the sidelines, though, you know, of lesser interest or prominence to heroic characters. And can we tie that in here, where, like we're saying, that this is a parallel with a storyline involving our heroes, but it gets less prominence? Like we've said previously, you have to kind of join the dots a little bit, and so on and so forth. Is that something that you would take issue with this film, the way it portrays those characters?
Yeah, I think so. I think we are assuming that he's saving his partner because of love. I don't think that's overtly said in any way. I guess we do sort of see him talk to his partner towards the end of the film, but we aren't, you know, I am assuming that he loves his husband and he's trying to save his life. At no point does he ever say, you know, this is for my husband, or I'm doing this to save the person I love. Like we're reading into the film, I think, to say that. I guess my question as well is also, there's something about it that makes me uncomfortable, and I'm not sure if I'm absolutely correct in feeling this way, but I feel slightly uncomfortable that they've made the villain gay, because this idea that, like, I feel there's a linking between Father Joe's sexual compulsions, the abuse of the abused choir boy, and his gay husband. You know, there's a linking there between like the sexual abuse of children and homosexuality. I'm not sure they ever meant to do that, but I think you could have made the villain. You could have made it. You could have told the story a different way. You know, you could have made it that the victim of Father Joe, that it was his son that was trying to save him. You know, that he'd gone on to have children or something, or that it was his parent that was trying to save him, or you could have made it that it was his wife who was trying to save them. But there's just a lot of stories out there about people who are the victim of child abuse growing up to be gay men, right? And I guess what you could say is that sexual predators are very clever at picking victims, and maybe they sense that these kids are different than their peers. Maybe they sense these kids are conflicted about their sexuality, whatever. From stuff that I've watched, like documentaries and stuff, gay men have said, like, well, obviously my teacher knew that I was gay and therefore he thought he could exploit me, But we don't want to equate homosexuality with sexual offenders. Do you know, we don't want to equate the two with paedophilia. Like the two, they're not linked together. Like, do you know what I mean? We don't want to equate like a gay married couple with the sexual abuse of children. And I feel this film links the two, even if it might not mean to. It does link the two, and also it makes the villains like gay, and there's something about it doesn't sit right with me. There's no other gay characters in the film.
Very few in the series as a whole. There are some exceptions, like the couple in X-Cops, aren't there? But very, very few, I think. In total. It
just doesn't feel. And if we are going to make them a married couple, then I think we need to say quite explicitly, like, this guy's doing this for love. Not make it out as this sort of like subtext in the background that we kind of have to read into it. Do you know what I mean? There's just something that doesn't fit right with me. I'm not saying that the writers or Chris Carter or anyone who made it was trying to say anything negative about homosexuality. I don't think they were at all. But it's like an afterthought. They threw this in. Oh, they're married. Well, this will be a motivation. Yeah. And it just doesn't work for me, I think.
I think you're right that it's very unlikely to me, I would guess anyway, that there's any kind of intentional drive to provide a, stereotyped or reductive kind of portrayal. I think it is maybe kind of what you're saying. It's the combination of elements that have been thrown together here do bring some unfortunate connotations with it. In a way that, like I said, I don't think there was any kind of malign intent by the writer or director at all, by Carter. I suppose one of the things that's fascinating about looking at I Want to Believe Now, so we're recording all these episodes in 2024, of course, and the movie came out in 2008, and there's a reference in this minute to they're married in the state of Massachusetts, and the relevance there is that Massachusetts was the first state in the United States, 2003, that had legalized same-sex marriage. There were many developments in the following years, so that's one of the things that already marks this out as a historic film in a way. Not that it's a landmark film, but in that reference would now be very different, wouldn't it, if the movie was made today? And it's a relatively short time ago, isn't it, 2008? When you think back to, the US isn't the only country that's legalized same-sex marriage, of course, in the intervening years. And I don't know, just something interesting, I think, about that, how that journey to marriage equality has progressed a lot in a relatively short space of time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that does give it a historic element. Like, there'll be people who'll be watching this in the future, they'll be like, why did he say that? I don't understand that. Yeah. Younger generations, I mean, for some people, for most people coming up, growing up and who will be born after this and everything, it will be seen as like, I think, as like, just like, what? That doesn't make it. You mean people couldn't get married in certain parts of the world? They couldn't get married in certain states? It will be just seen as truly bizarre, like a little bit like, I think was it this year? Mark 70, was it 75? No, I think it's less than that. Certain amount of years since, I think it was at 1974. I don't know. There was okay, I'm totally going to ruin any statistics here. But, it wasn't that long ago that women couldn't own a credit card of their own. Or they could take out a credit card, but they needed their husband to go along with them and sign for it. And that just seems insane now, right? But so there's lots of stuff in the past that I suppose was just part of the normal societal rules at the time. And I guess legal as well in this case when it comes to gay marriage. That in the future people will just think, why did anybody bother to like prevent people from getting married? Like, what? Why? So this is an example of that. Like, it sounds silly to us now. Why not just say they're married? But because, of course, in Virginia, they weren't legally married. In the state of Virginia. Yeah.
Although, having said that, these are still issues that are controversial, are the subject of debate even in the present day, aren't they? one example I would give, and I think, we have listeners all over the world on the Xcast, but only a few years ago, I think maybe 2018, there was a film from Kenya called Rafiki. It was about the love between two teenage girls, and it was like, quite a high-profile film in the sense it was screened at film festivals like Cannes and so on, but it was banned in Kenya itself. Homosexuality is still illegal there, so, there are still countries where, where the rate of progress hasn't been the same.
Definitely. There's parts of the world where, you can, your life will be threatened if you're found out to be homosexual. Yeah, so, and people are faced with very difficult decisions in those places, whether it's to stay and leave or...
Yeah, but also there might be countries where, if we think of progress as a straight line, in one direction, that's not the case always. There are periods where it goes into retrenchment and goes
America is also could be said to be one of those countries at times, where success and progress happens in lots of ways, but then there's also political attempts to change that and roll it back and change the law again, and lots of situations.
Even in kind of the case of an innocuous children's film, like there was a Buzz Lightyear movie in the last year or two which involved a very brief same-sex kiss, I think, but I saw a news story about cinema warning people, warning audience members about this.
Or even the latest Fantastic Beasts movie. Not that there isn't problems with the whole Wizarding World franchise and some of the problems. There's problems with it already. But, I heard that then they were going to show it in places like China. They were talking about cutting out certain scenes because they didn't want to imply that Grindelwald and Dumbledore had been in like a romantic or sexual relationship in the past. And by cutting out that romantic element of the story, you're kind of making the story not make any sense. Like, I don't understand how I actually don't know what viewers would have been able to glean from the story. I would be like, why are these two men not fighting? Why are these two men fighting? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I think when Disney or big studios make films, there's a real push to have more diversity of characters in it, coming from countries in the West, coming from places in people in groups in America, groups in the UK, groups in Europe and stuff. We want more diversity. We want more stories with a whole spectrum of love shown. And different relationships, but then also these companies have to market these big films to other parts of the world where censors don't want that. Audiences, whether the audiences want it or not, it's a different thing. Like, I'm not sure audiences in China really care. They might not mind, but it's like the sort of state and the censors are not happy with it, so they sort of cut stuff out, don't they, to try and change it.
Yeah, so you sometimes get what we're told is great progressive representation in a massive blockbuster film, but it's done in such a way that it can be easily reduced or eliminated.
And like Disney will have that problem because the market for Disney in Asia or in Russia is big, it's huge. So I'm just saying Russia because Russia also has quite homophobic policies. But like, do you know what I mean? Like if you've got a film like Buzz Lightyear, they probably will put in a tiny scene so that can be cut so that the film can be shown in China to a huge audience and without the worry that they'll ban the film or something.
Yeah.
It's financial, it's business decisions, isn't it? It's a choice between like the moral argument of better representation versus the business argument of like, well, we need to make money, and if we put a gay couple in this movie, we won't get a huge audience. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure I always believe that either, but...
No, it's... and there's a lot more we could sort of delve into there, I think, in terms of how I think these big companies sometimes weaponize like social media reaction as well. But anyway, I think we should note at this point that this minute ends with Mulder getting in the car with the other FBI agents. Scully says to him that it's over, but he doesn't believe so. He's going in the car with them to investigate further. He is driven off, and this is teeing up the action that's to come for us to talk about Clara in subsequent minutes. So I think we should stop there at that point and promise to listeners that we'll be back to cover minute 65 very soon. And we'll be back next time, listeners. But until then, always remember, trust no one.